A compass. Not a torpedo, not a storm, not an enemy fleet waiting in the dark. A $5 compass. The fleet it helped destroy was worth over $2 billion. 14 warships, thousands of trained sailors. The most powerful naval force its nation had ever assembled, built over decades, funded by an entire empire, designed to be completely unstoppable. Gone. Not in a battle, not in a war, because a cheap compass pointed in the wrong direction. And here is the part that will genuinely make you stop. The men on those ships knew something was felt it. They discussed it. Some of them argued about it on the deck while it was happening. And still, straight box. This is the story of how the most powerful naval force in the world got destroyed by the one thing no amount of money, training, or military power has ever been able to fully defeat: human certainty.
Level 1. The fleet that felt untouchable. To understand how a $5 compass sank a superfleet, you need to feel how powerful that fleet actually was. It is 1707. The British Royal Navy is the most dominant military force on the water anywhere in the world. And Admiral Sir Cloudesley Shovell is commanding 21 ships returning home from Gibraltar after a long military campaign. These aren't small boats. These are first and second-rate warships. Massive wooden vessels carrying hundreds of cannons each, crewed by some of the most experienced sailors in the British Empire. The Admiral himself is a legend. He had fought in more naval battles than most men had seen in a lifetime. He was trusted by the crown, celebrated by the public, feared by enemies. His fleet had survived everything: enemy fire, Atlantic storms, months at sea in brutal conditions. Nothing had touched them. And now, they were going home. Just a few days from the English coast. The hard part was over, or so everyone believed. But underneath that confidence, underneath the celebration of a campaign completed and a journey nearly finished, something was already wrong, and it had been wrong for days.
Level 2. The problem nobody could solve. In 1707, navigation at sea had one fatal weakness. Sailors could calculate their latitude, north or south position. That was manageable, using the sun and stars with reasonable accuracy. But longitude, east or west position, was a completely different problem. There was no reliable way to calculate it at sea in 1707. None. The mathematics existed, but the technology to apply it accurately on a moving ship did not. So navigators used a method called dead reckoning. You start from a known position. You track your speed. You track your direction using a compass. You track how much time has passed. And from those three things, you calculate where you should be. It sounds reasonable. It worked well enough in calm conditions with accurate instruments. But dead reckoning had one critical weakness that every experienced sailor knew: small errors compound. A tiny mistake in your speed calculation, multiplied over days, becomes a large mistake in your position. A slight inaccuracy in your compass reading, multiplied over hundreds of miles, puts you somewhere completely different from where you think you are. And if your compass itself is slightly broken, every calculation you make from the moment you leave port is building on a false foundation. Admiral Shovell's navigators had been using their instruments for weeks. They believed they knew exactly where they were. They were wrong by miles. But that wasn't even the most terrifying part of what was about to happen.
Level 3. The warning nobody listened to. Here is the detail that makes this story genuinely dark. On the day the disaster happened, at least one person on those ships knew something was wrong. A common sailor. No rank worth mentioning. Nobody important. He had been watching the navigation, watching the compass readings, watching the calculations being made by officers far above his station. And he believed, based on what he could see and feel and observe, that the fleet was not where the officers said it was. He raised his concern. According to historical accounts, he was punished for it. Speaking up against the navigation of a superior officer was considered dangerously close to mutiny, the kind of thing that could get a man flogged or worse. The officer class did not accept challenges to their calculations from men without rank or title, so the warning
was silenced. The fleet kept moving. Stop for 1 second and think about this. You are a common sailor. You believe the fleet is heading toward rocks. You have already been punished once for saying so. The officers above you are completely certain they are right. The Admiral himself has approved the course. Do you speak up again? Because what you do in that moment, stay silent and survive, or speak up and risk everything, is the exact same decision that is played out in every major disaster in human history. And almost every time, people stay silent.
Level 4. The night the fleet died. On the night of October 22nd, 1707, in thick fog, in darkness, in weather that made visibility almost zero, the fleet hit the rocks of the Scilly Isles. Not one ship, 4 ships in rapid succession. The Association, Admiral Shovell's flagship, hit first and sank in under 4 minutes. 800 men on board, almost all of them gone in the time it takes to make a cup of tea. The Eagle followed, the Romney, the Firebrand. In total, approximately 1,400 sailors died that night. The Admiral himself, the celebrated legend, the man trusted by the crown, the commander who had survived every battle the British Empire had thrown at him, drowned in the dark water off the English coast. Miles from where his compass told him 4 ships. 1,400 men, $2 billion in modern terms, destroyed by a $5 compass that pointed slightly wrong, and the absolute certainty of men too confident to question what it was telling them. But here is what happened next that made the whole disaster even darker. The killer ending. When the bodies washed ashore, locals found Admiral Shovell still alive on the beach. Barely, but alive. According to accounts recorded decades later, a woman found him, and instead of helping him, she killed him for the emerald ring on his finger. The story was only revealed 30 years later when the woman confessed on her deathbed. The greatest naval commander of his era, who had survived enemy cannon fire, Atlantic storms, and decades of warfare, was murdered on a beach by a stranger. And here is the question I want you to answer. Was the real cause of this disaster the broken compass, a failure of technology that the era simply couldn't fix? Or was it human arrogance? The refusal of powerful men to listen to a common sailor who saw the danger before anyone else did. Because one of those lessons died with the fleet in 1707. The other one is still killing people today. After the disaster, the British government finally took the longitude problem seriously. They established the Board of Longitude in 1714, offered a massive prize to anyone who could solve the problem of calculating longitude accurately at sea. It took decades more to solve it properly. 1,400 men died. $2 billion in ships sank to the bottom of the ocean. And it all started with a compass that cost $5, pointed just slightly in the wrong direction, on a fleet so powerful, so celebrated, so certain of itself that it sailed straight into the rocks without slowing down. The most expensive naval disaster in British history, caused by the cheapest instrument on the ship, a $5 compass nobody thought to check.